All right, everyone. So, in past discussions, I should have gone through why the balance sheet looks like it does, with assets equals liabilities plus equity. If you have questions, please let me know on what we discussed about so far so I can try to help answer. What I really want to focus on now, though, is this. And we're going to talk a lot about definitions too when we talk about this. So that part of the equation looks like this. It's a separate statement that also goes within the balance sheet. So it is part of the balance sheet, but it also holds its own. And again, that's the equation, and we're focused on stockholders' equity. Stockholders' equity has a couple parts to it. The first part, and let's do this branch. Stockholders' equity has to do with ownership. So the stockholders themselves. Stockholders own the company through common stock and additional paid-in capital. Paid in capital. All right, let's learn how to calculate that stuff, shall we? We got space right here to do it. So common stock, let's spell that right. Refers to the number of stocks someone has. You can do common stock value. Can also sometimes be just referred to common stock as well. I've seen it interchanged before. Let's make sure it looks nice. Common stock value is calculated through the following method. You take your par value and you times it by the number of shares you hold. Memorize first when thinking of this equation right here, because it will help you calculate common stock value or common stock. Next, you have additional paid-in capital, or APIC. This is equal to the value of the stock on the market times number of shares. That value minus common stock. Because what additional paid-in capital refers to, and let me get another page for this. 1 second. Let's create another blank page. What APIC refers to is the value of the stock above the minimum value the company is willing to pay stockholders. Let's go down and break it a bit more up so that we understand. And I have plenty of white space, so it's good. Remember when I was calculating common stock? I talked about something called par value. This is defined by the minimum amount a company must have on hand. So if they go broke, they can pay stockholders. And so what par value tells you is a company says, we can give you 1 cent for every stock you have. We have that on hand. That is easy for us. You don't have to fear. It's a statistic that really lets you know as an investor how risky or not your investment is. And then APIC is basically, as you can see by the definition, the value including that but above that. And you can think of it all as what you would consider the market value of the stock is equal to APIC, the value above the common stock, what's left over after you take out the minimum from the market value, plus the minimum. Now, I think it's good for us to clear this out and give an example. So let's take a company called, we'll expand this out again so I have more space. Let's take a company called GD. Let's say on the market, their stock goes for $183 per stock. Let's say we had 10,000 shares. I'm not going to do the math, but I'm going to show you how it works. So on one side of the equal sign, it's 183 times 10,000. I mean, we can reasonably agree that this is the market value of what this stock will go for. If you own 10,000 shares of this stock, if you were to trade those in, you would get that. On this other side, what this market value is composed of, what's inside it, is you have the minimum, and let's say the minimum is $1, and so $1 times 10,000, and then you have APIC, which is what's left over. So if you have $1 times 10,000, that's 10,000. But then what's left over is $182. The additional valuation of the stock times the number of shares you have. And let me just upload this computer calculator for a second just to make sure my numbers are correct. Remember, the stock was 183,000. The stock was $183. You have 10,000 shares. So it's 1,830,000 is what you would get. What you would compose that of is the $1 times 10,000, which is 10,000, and then the 182 times 10,000. And then if you notice, that plus that is equal to that. This plus this is equal to that. And I like to think of this as what is the market value that you look at the stock market. What is that composed of? It is composed of the par value plus the additional paid in capital, or the actual value. Additional paid in capital is kind of like saying, we love your company so much that we think it's worth more than the minimum you're willing to pay us. All right. That's one part of stockholders' equity. Understanding that gives you half the data that you need in order to make it. Before we go on, let's talk about a little bit of stockholders' equity. What this does is it just gives an idea, stockholders, an idea of how the company is investing, is reinvesting in their business, and the likelihood that they would get paid. Or get more money, or get money. I want to talk about this part of the equation next. So we have stockholders here. Now on this side, we have operations. On one side we have debit, and on one side we have credit. On this debit side for operations, we have dividends. This is usually a minus because a company, when they do dividends, they're basically saying we, the board of directors, are requiring or are saying that out of our retained earnings, which usually is on this side and is a positive, we are going to give money to stockholders as a reward. And let me just draw a happy face. It's a little tongue sticking out. You can think of this subject of dividends as revenue sharing or bonuses for people who own stock. And this is something that they can choose to do or choose not to do. Because let me give another space to write. Let me clear this out and give another space to write. Because what's left is retained earnings, or RE, retained earnings. That's on the other part of the stockholders' equity. It's a credit, you plus it. And this is what's reinvested in the company from revenues. And so a company, let's just put it this way, a company, if they're doing equity, can choose. Do they want to give stockholders dividends? Or do they want to reinvest in their company? One's a negative, one's a positive. Typically, what happens is new businesses do that. Beginning Microsoft did that. Beginning Google did that. Typically, when you're well established, you can start doing that. This is not a new business one. This is an older business. Who wants to stimulate investment. And you can do both. You can do the magic both. But the idea is in statement of stockholders' equity, you can either do this one, or you can do this one, or you can do both, and the company gets to choose. This can affect assets by you can increase equipment or other things later. This typically is an expense. All right. Again, see me if you have any questions on anything. What this boils down to is when you create a statement of stockholders' equity, you need to know retained earnings, dividends. You also need to know common stock. You need to know APIC, or additional paid-in capital. And if I'm forgetting anything, you need to know that, but this should encompass the majority of what we just talked about in this video right now. We'll come back to this when we talk about the income statement, but again, please let me know if you have any questions. Have a great day.